Welcome to The Secret Witch Show, the podcast providing a safe and alchemical altar space of conversations which help powerful women escape a half-hearted, spiritless society and rediscover the freedom of living a wildly magical life. Every other week, we explore how to cast aside the wounds of shame, guilt, and fear connected with fully being yourself, so you can grant yourself permission to stop hiding, ground soulfully back into your body, illuminate your whole soul desires, tend your soul, rediscover and reclaim your powerful gifts, express your magic, and manifest your wildest alchemy. There's no better place to become who your heart longs to be. This is where we will guide you into liberation. I'm your host, Nicole Barton, and I'm so excited to dive in. Welcome, witches. I'm feeling juicy here as we record this episode, and as you receive it, you will be in summer, and I'll likely be in the jungle in Costa Rica, living my desired manifestations for a witchy jungle summer, having moved through all the unworthiness layers. So this is a timely episode that I'm excited to share with you. Before we dive in though, I have a beautiful invitation. I have an amazing free ceremony coming up for you on the 18th of September. It's called Meet Your Witch, and it's a free taster ritual experience for our Magical Secret Witches Apothecary membership for anyone who has felt the call to liberate their inner witch and heal themselves, so you can claim your magic as a healer. I'll be guiding you into workshopy illumination pieces before enjoying a beautiful, relaxing witchy ceremony where you will meet the inner witch you have been longing to meet, perhaps for the first time. If you're lit up by that and you can feel a desire, maybe through the fear, and maybe you'll allow that more by the end of the episode today, then you can head to Eventbrite and sign up for your free ticket at meetyourwitch.eventbrite.com. That will also be in the show notes. So anyway, let's dive in to today's episode on The Secret Witch Show. Today, I am illuminating the tender ache that arises when witches dare to want and then feel unworthy to receive it. This episode is a healing invocation for the women who are opening to name their true desires, only to find shame, doubt, and old fear flooding. It's for sensitive-hearted magic makers who have danced with your longings but still hesitate at the threshold of letting them come in. In this episode, I explore why desire is sacred, not selfish, and how the witch uses longing as a compass and what it really takes to receive what we've called in without burning out, bypassing our body, or shrinking into unworthiness. I weave the radiant flame of Archetypal Phosphorus through the journey of feminine creation, sharing somatic wisdom, soul stories, and a liberating reframe of manifestation as a state of being rather than something to do. If you've been hovering at the edge of your deepest longing to create a life as a healer witch, this one is for you. Let's dive in. Welcome, magical ones. I have to say, feeling the energy of desire and sensuality as I record this. I've been leading a journey with Archetypal Phosphorus, or flame, if you want to call her something that makes more sense. She's the substance on the end of match that lights up and ignites. So I've been sharing that in the Apothecary recently, as I've been diving into the inner fire of desire. And I guess because of that, I've been feeling such a juicy freedom in my body. So today I'm fully embodied in that. I'm wearing my black silky shorts, my sexy floral number, and I've got my bold red lip on. So here I am in my unapologetically fiery flame of being in pleasure, because pleasure is really the compass. Desire, pleasure, they're the witch's compass to living a soul-led life. So we're here to explore how to receive your desired manifestations as a witch without feeling unworthy. And what a topic. I'm so excited for this one. And essentially, what I've come to see as I've journeyed with the witch deeply, I've realised it's kind of coming up to 5 years almost since I've been sharing about the witch. And one of the things that is the biggest thing that I've learned is that the liberated witch knows that desire is a compass to our souls. And so what the witch really calls to us through desire. And that can often feel confusing as we start to open to hearing the witch's calls, because often what happens is we'll hear her calling our soul, we'll feel it in our bones, we're like, yes, this is for me, like I'm here to work with the witch. But then what happens is all our conditioning, all our shame, all our fear, all our doubt shows up. So often the secret witch will land here listening to this, and then what will happen is she will have all the fear. Like she'll feel the desire often to be a healer of some kind, to heal herself, to go into this like deep journey of liberating the witch and sharing our truly expressed self, our magical self, being unapologetically magical. And then all the fear comes in. And so that can feel a little bit confusing. Like you start to think, well, am I meant to be a witch or am I not? Because on the one hand, like I'm loving the journey. I feel really inspired. I feel really full of desire to be my witch. On the other hand, I then swing into the opposite and feel completely uninspired, completely scared, terrified, being like, is this even right for me? And so we feel that we can't choose to take soul-aligned actions. Like lots of fears coming up around our desire that's been kind of shamed and suppressed by ourselves, but also because of how conditioned we are in our society. And so what happens is there tends to be a lot of shame around desire. We're taught in our society, in our culture, to shame our desires, to shame our wants. We're judged for it because it's just something that's not acceptable in our culture to have desires and wants and even needs, even basic needs. This happens with for the witch, the secret witch. And so we fear that we're going to be seen as selfish, that will be seen as self-obsessed, that will be seen as narcissistic. Even in some instances, spirituality itself shames desire. You think of kind of Buddhist paths that say, oh, you need to detach from your desires, you need to unattach from your desires, just allow what comes to come. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, by the way. I think there's kind of like a co-creation that happens between soul and spirit, which I'm not going to talk too much to in this episode, but I'm just naming that like that is also still a valid part of the path as we're journeying. Like we need to be able to go through that part of the path to arrive at a place where we then allow ourselves to really attune to our soul desires, because our soul desires are really guiding us and nudging us towards what we've come here for. So essentially all of these things have us bypassing our body, bypassing her feminine calls, bypassing the sensations in our body that go, oh yeah, this is for you. And we end up bypassing our human experience often, which is what the witch calls us back to. The witch, I often see it because I had a very spiritual journey. And there was also a very beautiful journey I had with the priestess and the witch. And the priestess often can kind of have this very floaty, like, oh yeah, spirit is we're just being guided by spirit all the time. And that is absolutely true. So I'm not diminishing that. But my experience of the witch is she will call us back to reality. She'll call us down to earth, down to the earth, basically. She calls us back home to Mama Earth. And she kind of grounds us back in the body. Like that was my own experience of the witch. She kind of called me down into the nitty gritty darkness and was like, remember, you're human. And so that, there is spirit and human co-creating is how I've come to integrate that. Like there's not an either or in that if you're hearing it as that. But the witch will call us home to our bodies and to desire. And the reason why this is so vital is because when we feel shame of any kind, not just around desire, but like any shame that we feel, we are in suppression. What happens is when we feel shame, we suppress parts of ourselves, parts of our souls. So whatever that is, like whatever shame we feel, we are likely then going to unconsciously suppress that part of ourselves, because that's a protective mechanism. We've learned to do that because anything that's shameful is not allowed, it's not liked, it's, we feel guilty about it. And then therefore we shove that into the corner or into a shadow bag that we're like kind of lugging over our shoulders, and we ignore it. as if it's not there and it's never happened. And the magical lineage of healing, which I often talk about, homeopathy being one of the main ones, but also archetypal psychology and energy healing, there's this kind of the magical way of thinking about healing shows, and this is very much Hahnemann, who's the kind of creator of homeopathy, or the person who discovered homeopathy. He talks about how, and this is a universal law of healing, is that what is suppressed in us drains our life force and vitality. So essentially, shaming ourselves drains our life force and vitality. And when our life force and vitality is like drained, we feel depleted, and we end up manifesting illness. We manifest disease in the body instead of manifesting our desires, which is what we're here to talk about. And so, most vitally, to put that into context and perspective, like, manifesting our desires is therefore manifesting health. So this shaming of our desires is actually perpetuating disease in the world. And the best example I can think of that, when I was thinking about this before I pressed record, was one of the remedies that we often work with, that's an ancestral remedy, is archetypal carcinosum. And she's the cancer miasm. The cancer cell being a cell that doesn't have an identity and has no boundaries. So as an archetype, this is all about the suppression of our identity, the suppression of our needs, our wants. It's the ancestral wounding of like, I have to give all of myself to others. Like, there's just no boundaries there. And we end up in depletion. And of course, then sickness. Often the manifestation of that is cancer. And that's, again, quite an edgy thing for me to say and share here, because I'm aware how radically different that is to how we view disease process happening in the mainstream modern world. But ultimately, what that's showing us is that when we suppress our identity, we get sick. So this is why desire, which is ultimately leading us back to our own identity, like, this is our way of individuating by experiencing desire and allowing ourselves to experience desire, because we have a unique soul that's come here for a unique reason. Our soul came here to have a particular experience, and that's a different experience from everyone else. And desire is the thing that helps us go, oh yeah, that's for me. Like, it is literally a compass. So I often say desire is a compass for the witch. And why is it so important? And why is it a desire? Why is desire a compass for the witch? Is because it keeps us healthy. Like, desire helps us know how to honor the body, how to honor the body's sensations and signals, how to lead us back to soul. And the more that I have allowed myself through the fear, because I've been there and still am at times, like, the more I have learned how to almost like just lean in and kind of lean off that cliff and allow myself to follow desire, even when it feels like terrifying. There's that beautiful quote, isn't there, about landing in a feather bed, which was just escaping me right now, even though it's one of my favourites. But the more that I've allowed myself to do that, to follow my desires, to follow my soul's nudges, even when they seem crazy, ridiculous, like unsafe even, or just like not possible, the more that I have noticed that doors open where I wouldn't have even imagined them to. And I've had to move through, like, even choosing what I desired when it felt shameful, which is what we're talking about. Like, the example I often give, and I've talked about this in some of my in the apothecary, is that I once left a relationship that wasn't aligned, and was then with another man that I desired, and that took deep courage. But it was also me following deeply what was aligned for my soul. And I healed so much physically, emotionally, spiritually, on all levels, and soul particularly. I was like able to live my truth, and that's, I wouldn't be here doing what I did if I hadn't done that. But so I had so much more aliveness, energy, and vitality as I chose myself, as I followed my desires. And that's not to say that you have to go and leave the relationship you're in. That might not be your version of what's being called for in terms of desire. But and the point is, the world would judge our desires as witchy. My desire is witchy, dark, shameful. That's often what the witch represents. So she'll kind of synchronistically call us to what we desire, but also ask us to lean into the edge of like really fully choosing what we desire when the rest of the world doesn't make sense to them. Often that journey for the witch, for the secret witch, is that they desire to be a healer, and maybe their family doesn't understand, or our friends don't understand, or whoever doesn't understand that desire. But the witch calls us to that. And so also I want to just add, if you're finding yourself judging me as I share that, I want to gently offer, like, what mirror does that hold to where you're disallowing your own desires? So first lesson today is that desire isn't selfish, it is sacred. It is how our inner witch whispers this way to our soul. And naming what we truly want, well, firstly, illuminating what we truly want, because often we don't know as secret witches. Often desire has been so shamed and shoved down that we can't even connect to what we want. And there's a lot in the Apothecary that helps you to begin to connect to that. And in fact, there's a meet your witch ceremony coming up soon that is free to all. So I'll pop that in the show notes if you want to attune to your witchy desires. Or begin that journey. There's also, I think, something if you sign up on our website that you should be able to get. There's like a little starter pack as well that guides you through that. So if you want, head to sign up on our website, which again the show notes will have the link. But ultimately, naming what we truly want, and even doing the work to illuminate what we truly want, is a powerful spell. It's kind of the opening of the door, because the moment we admit our desires, especially not even just the big ones. I was going to say especially the big radiant ones, but actually even just the small ones, a great kind of practice area. That's when we open up to receiving them. So one thing that I do want to speak to, though, is what tends to happen when we do begin to illuminate our desires. Because what tends to happen, and I've kind of already spoken to this a little bit, is that what can come up as well as we start to illuminate is fear. The fear of receiving. Like, who am I to have that? So there's often, when we open to our desires, what can happen is there's an instant contraction that follows the illumination of them. And so you may be experiencing this if you've like kind of opened to the secret witch and like, oh yeah, this feels juicy, I'm excited, like what, I'm going to be a healer. And then instantly in comes like, oh God, but hang on, what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? What if life obliterates me by following this desire? And often beneath that, there is a deeper fear. So I invite you to ask yourself, like, what would it mean if I failed? What would it mean if I wasn't good enough? What would it mean if it obliterated my life? And just see what comes from that inquiry. Often there's a deeper fear of, I'm not worthy of this. And that can manifest in many different ways. Because our nervous systems essentially have been wired just to remain in longing rather than in receiving. We've been taught to shame the receiving. And actually, half the time, our nervous systems have been wired to not even be in longing. So even that can be shameful. So most secret witches, and secret witches, by the way, are women who are absolutely magical, but aren't yet owning that unapologetic magic. Most secret witches will feel safer either dismissing their longings or remaining in longing but not having. And so what's required realistically is a journey of unpacking the emotional safety that we've associated with not having, with not receiving. And this can be in childhood, this can be from conditioning, from our culture. It can be all sorts of things. And we're not going to fully deep dive into that in one episode. It would be impossible to do so. Like, this is deep work that we're talking about. But if you want to start taking steps towards that, then I recommend that you join our Apothecary membership, where many of our archetypal remedies take you into healing around desire. Like it's part of a much bigger process. But what I do want to do in this episode is kind of like give you some foundational understanding around this, and to dive into manifestation, because that's what this episode is about. So firstly, a bit of background, because there is a difference between in terms of how I'm going to explain it, there's a difference between manifesting and receiving. So firstly, I studied old paradigms of manifestation for a long time. And I'm calling them old paradigms because they're old to me. There may well be paradigms that you explore. So things like law of attraction, mainstream manifestation. And I have done all the things. I've vision boarded my way through life, woke for daily morning rituals, manifestation rituals, etc., all the things. But after years, I was still not receiving what I longed for. And I see now that that's because the old paradigms of manifestation were based in effort, force, hustle. They were based in the idea that, you have to do something. You have to go out and create a vision board. And sometimes I still invite women to create vision boards because that can feel juicy, but it's not a requirement. Like it's the energetic being. It's who we're being that is going to have us receiving what we long to manifest. So instead of effort, force, and hustle and the old paradigms of manifestation, what I saw was missing was an understanding of true feminine magic, which is what I teach. And that's things like openness, trust, magnetism, like being in the embodied energetic of the witch, essentially, like being fully embodied in our feminine magic. So I was essentially missing the energetic witchy principles of ancient feminine magic, which I now guide women into. Because essentially, as long as we're attempting to control, force, or hustle our way to receiving our desires, we're essentially repelling them, like forcing them away. So receiving isn't about control. It's about our capacity to unapologetically desire and unapologetically receive. So unapologetically desire, number one, and unapologetically receive. Those two things, if we hold wounding around either of those, we're going to create from that wounding. And so to do that, we have to learn to love ourselves in the fears that come in. So if we're experiencing fears, where there's something to heal, and we don't want to bypass those, we don't want to override them with positive affirmations as we're taught in the mainstream manifestation world. We want to look directly at the wounds that are in the way of us desiring and receiving unapologetically. And this is the deep work. This is where a lot of people will fall off because they'll be like, no, that sounds like too much effort. Again, it's not a doing. It's almost like, again, we often approach this work as a doing. I often think, okay, right, I've got to carve out an hour a day to be in this deep work. Whereas the reality is we can just notice, I always invite women to just be in the noticing practice of like where we're noticing, hang on, that I really struggled to desire that. Like I had a desire and then I shut it down. Or like, somebody tried to give me something and I was like, no, I'm all right, thank you. As we do, like it's living into that inquiry, and as we live into that inquiry, we start to notice that we shift. Like when we make it conscious and we go, hang on, somebody just offered me something and I said no, even though I wanted it. Like, why did I say no? Was it because I felt rude? Was it because I didn't feel it was worthy of it? And the next time somebody goes, hey, would you like this? We go, pause. I know my temptation is to go, no, but do I want it? Yes. Okay, it's going to be edgy for me to say yes, but maybe I say, do you know what? I normally would say no because that's what I've been taught. That's what I've been taught is right. But actually, I'd really love that. Thank you. And then we just subtly start to shift it in our lives. So there's no doing. It's a noticing and a making conscious of the patterns. So if you're here listening to this, I suspect that you're being called to let life, love and abundance come in. And to do that, we have to meet the shadow that is fighting it. Honestly, in truth, I sometimes wish it was just as easy as wishing for something like mainstream manifestation quick fixes sell. They're making millions from serving false promises and missing the deep work. And I was chatting to my guide about that the other day, being like, this is so frustrating. Why is the world buying into these false promises? So there's some triggering there for me to work through. And I'll be honest, the deep work that we're talking about here is always a harder path to choose. But I'm also here to serve it, even if that means it's slower for people to choose, harder for people to choose. Like, I'm here for it. Because here's the myth that drives you mad, that those paths are telling you, that we have to do something to manifest. So I'm already busting that myth. We do not have to do more. We simply have to see this one important point. So here's the thing that nobody's telling you. Or some people are telling you, but there's not like a depth to it. Is that we are already creating. We are already always manifesting. You are manifesting right now. Life is living you right now. You are creating right now. We can't not be creating so long as we are alive. It's just that largely what the secret witch does is she creates from her unconscious wounding. By the way, the witch is a creatrix, so that, there's no way of getting away from the fact that you are already a creatrix. You're already creating. It's just that what you're creating is largely from trauma, from unconscious wounding, from remedy states, as I would call them. Like these, if you imagine yourself as an onion right at the core, you had no wounding. Like when you were born, you were just this beautiful, probably maybe phosphorus, like open-eyed, curious, bubbly, tiny little baby who's like into everything. It's like, oh, this world is magical. And then as trauma happened to you, there were layers of trauma that started to happen, and you went into different remedy states. It's what we call archetypal remedy states. Each layer of the onion is an archetypal remedy state. And our work really in this path is to peel back those layers, look at them, help ourselves to make those conscious. And each time we make those conscious, that layer is creating less for us, and we're becoming more of a conscious creator, conscious creatrix, a conscious witch. And that's how we manifest. So each of the remedies that I serve is helping women to heal another layer of unconscious creating, so that we can eventually come back to that who we were at the core and be creating, manifesting our magic. Oof, exciting, tingles. And so largely we're just creating from our unconscious wounding, just as if it's that simple. And honestly, that's why this work is so vital. And to break that down a little bit more, I'll give you a bit of an example, particularly around the feminine piece, because there's so many remedies that are healing the feminine in this path, because it's so vital. And in particular, we're talking about desire and creating, because women are built to create. We're literally built to birth. That's what our bodies do. Like, that's the ultimate creation. Like, creation comes through us naturally. And maybe sometimes that doesn't happen so naturally if you're thinking about birthing babies and you're experiencing, trauma and challenges with conceiving. I also acknowledge that, and that's also likely a place where there's trauma that wants unpacking to be able to create. So go tenderly with that. And maybe that's another episode, actually. Maybe one of my clients might be a good one for that, actually. Maybe I'll interview her. So essentially, though, when we talk about feminine receiving, if we are holding trauma in our bodies around receiving, in fact, if you're holding trauma in your feminine body full stop, aka you experienced any kind of trauma that felt penetrative, abusive, just like had you shut down in some way, had you close, anything like that, it's likely that your body is holding trauma around being open and receiving. Any kind of trauma that has likely had you feel like you need to protect, close, which is a natural response to trauma, by the way, and a needed response to trauma, is having you not want to open to receive your desires, because you're going to be closed instead of open. Archetypal Rosa actually is very beautiful as a first step, and she's also in the Apothecary as a self-guided journey. Archetypal Rosa is all about being in closures, particularly healing this wound of the feminine. She's very kind of tight in a bud, and doesn't want to open. So feminine receiving is definitely part of her magic. But like what can happen is we're kind of tighten the bud once we've experienced trauma, and it's very challenging to like open and bloom into that beautiful rose that can receive her desires. And so that's not a conducive state to receiving our desires, because we'll be closed instead of open. And like a big part of manifestation is learning how to stay open in that fear. And I'm going to reiterate here because it's so vital. Like we want to bring love to this. This is something to feel compassion for ourselves, not to start beating ourselves up for. There is no wrong in it. Like it is a vital and needed response from our nervous systems that has kept us safe, because we have experienced some trauma. And also, as much as that's true, feminine love's paradox, the truth is also that that is likely keeping you from receiving your desires. Naturally, because we're closed, we're protecting, we're in protection mode. And so there's healing to do to be able to move out of that protection mode. And I share this, that this requires feminine healing, because largely you look at the feminine body and it is built to receive. Like literally you think sexually, we are built as women to receive penetration. That's literally our body's natural makeup. Like that's how we're made, is how women are made. But how safe do we feel to receive in that way? Sex often offers a great metaphor for how safe we feel to receive, actually. So you could, if it feels safe to, and again, honor your body's no. Like if you don't want to go into this inquiry, I'm going to name it. You don't have to go into it. You might want to pause. You might want to write down the questions. But this could be a piece of work for you to go into if it feels aligned. And please do go gently with this one, because I'm aware that for some people it could be quite triggering. But I'm going to offer it, because the contemplation is, how safe do you feel to be in unapologetic pleasure? And you can think of it also in the context of in the bedroom. Like how safe do you feel to receive in the bedroom? How safe do you feel to ask for what you need in your relationship with lovers? Or lover? It's just one. Yeah. Don't know why more than one came out there. But yeah, might be more than one. These are likely indicators of how open you are to receiving your desires, these questions. So they go into those consciously, choose whether you go into those. Because again, unconscious, this conversation could feel triggering for some people. So I invite you, as you enter that, if you're listening, you're feeling triggered by those questions, like to just ground yourself for a moment, to feel your feet on the floor, to take some breaths, and to just let your inner little girl know, and your body and your nervous system know that you are safe. That's again like what we want to do as we go into these inquiries, and as we think about desire. And I know I share that because I know so many women heartbreakingly experience sexual trauma, like I have personally. So I know how big a thing this is. It's actually quite common for the secret witch as well. Bless her heart. It's why I work specifically with women, somatically, getting into their bodies, healing what arises for them around pleasure and desire. Like this is a big part of the work. Because until we heal this with the deeper work, not the superficial healing, but like the deep work, we will struggle to receive what we truly desire. That's something that I've experienced. Like we will always feel unworthy because that's what we've been taught in our culture about desires. Like even just in day-to-day life, women have been shown that we are unworthy to have our needs met. It's expected we just juggle busy lives as career women, mums, wives, etc. And we're taught to even shame our basic needs being met, let alone our desires. And what I want to say is, like, if you recognise yourself in this as I'm talking, that is part of the witch wound. We were taught that it was unsafe to desire a more magical way, that we'd be burned at the stake for claiming our magic, our worth, our power to manifest magical lives. Like our power was shamed. Our power to create and manifest magic was women were killed for it. So it's inbuilt into our bodies to shame desire, because what if we're going to get killed if we're in our feminine magic? And so sometimes, as I said earlier, that has us even disconnect from our desire at all. Like sometimes we feel a call to the witch and then it's just completely shamed. And we end up living a mundane life, burning out from being on the hamster wheel, not allowing ourselves to feel the truth of our heart and our soul. Even though sometimes they'll sneak in and they'll call for our attention and we'll hear it be like, oh yeah, I'm a witch. But then we end up going back into our mundane life and being compelled by all the things. And we end up in that cycle of feeling called, ignoring the call, and living dull, grey, mundane lives where we feel bored, where we feel unfulfilled, where we're crying on the inside, maybe even crying on the outside. And this shows up in Archetypal Phosphorus's remedy state, in her energy. She's this, as I mentioned earlier, she's this beautiful, brilliant, radiant flame who in her gold is like shining this torch and being like, this is the way for all of those who also need the healing that she's already journeyed with. But in shadow, she burns herself out. She dismisses that inner flame of her desire and ends up ash instead of shining brightly and unapologetically, the witch that she came here to be. And her heart's heat is dismissed because she feels unworthy. Phosphorus witches often shine bright but dim themselves for safety. And so the idea of creating our desires, of being magnetic and radiant, might trigger fears of being too much, of burning others or being abandoned. And as we begin to work with receiving, it asks of us to stay lit, even when it's uncomfortable. So Archetypal Phosphorus is a remedy that can help us begin to reclaim that. And here's the thing that Phosphorus, who's also the witch, by the way, she's essentially one of the constitutional remedies of the witch. You may not be Phosphorus as a constitution as a witch. There are others as well, but she's one of the main ones. And often witches will resonate with that kind of inner fire, inner magic. But Phosphorus, or the witch, knows that desire isn't a reward for being good or healed enough. It is a birthright. It's a birthright that the witch wound has had us forget. And what often happens because of that forgetting is we live in the illusion that when we're worthy, we'll finally receive. Like we wait for that to happen. We wait for worthiness to finally arrive and we're like, oh, thank God, I'm now worthy. I can receive. But worthiness never finds us whilst we wait. Like it's like bypassing the truth and waiting for it to just land in our laps, which isn't how it works. Like we think, oh, one day I'll feel ready and then I'll have the thing. Like soul doesn't work that way. We have to cultivate the energetic of worthiness to be able to receive. Like we have more creative power than that. Like we're so used to outsourcing our power and being like, oh, this will just happen one day. And something, and realistically, we're here to choose. Like, so we have to heal the inner child who thought that love and abundance had to be earned by doing more, who learned that she wasn't worthy, instead of claiming her life force and allowing herself to be in the juiciness of desire. And I have created so much. I was trying to think of, before I pressed record, I was trying to think of what I've created. And there's so much. Like, I remember early in my journey, I manifested a free laptop. I manifested, that was literally like £2,000. I manifested a free bed from Loaf, which was £3,000. Although magically, that was because I'd had a disaster happen with their first order and they credited the whole bed to make up for it. So this was back in the days when my secret witch believed that she could have her desires, but for a cost. So that was an old story that I healed. Through to manifesting a magical life as a healer witch, where I have a juicy collective healing business that helps people heal and does magic in the world, which is one of the biggest desires that I ever wanted to create. And I was thinking about this and reflecting because none of these things could have been created without me learning how to allow myself to desire the thing in the first place. Like nothing can manifest unless we desire it or dream it in the first place. None of them could have been created without me embodying the energetic of feminine receiving. Like desire, receiving. None of them could have been created without me healing my sense of inner unworthiness. And of course, I'm still going. Like I have bigger dreams and desires that I still feel the gap between my reality and my vision. Like, of course, I'm still healing, but I'm also taking a moment to be appreciative of what I've created, because I often spend time being like, oh, you haven't created what you said you wanted to create yet. It's like all secret witches do, which is hilarious probably to most of you for listening, because I often get reflected to me that my creative power is huge, and I have a huge capacity for creation. Often to the point where women are like, I just don't ever see that that's possible for me, which is hilarious to me, because I'm like, oh, I'm not creating enough. We are literally, our gifts are like right on the end of our nose and so unconscious to us that we can't see it. So yeah, just like all secret witches do, I spend time in the painful gap between where I am and where I want to be, and thinking that I don't have the creative capacity to create my big vision. And my guide actually reflected to me even yesterday, just how amazing what I had created in my business was. And I was like, oh, look, there's another edge of where my little girl doesn't feel safe to receive or worthy to acknowledge what she has created. Like, again, that can show up in like where we don't even acknowledge what we are already creating. That sense of like, oh, I'm not worthy to, or I'm not safe to acknowledge what has already been created. I didn't feel safe to be like, oh, I'm good. Like, I'm actually good. And like, there's data for that in my historical financials. And I'm doing it from creating a business from integrity that serves real healing in a world of false promise quick fixes. And I could feel like the energetic shift in just acknowledging where I am and how that's all been created from desire. So that's actually really timely. But in particular, I've created that by learning to expand my capacity to receive. And receiving requires nervous system regulation so that our bodies can hold the bigness of what's coming, like what it's not used to receiving. And that's something that's often, again, not talked about, because we often rush to the big desires, as I started to talk to earlier, like, and forget that our current system's not wired to receive that. Like, it can feel unsafe to receive our big desires. And so it can be helpful to explore, like, can our current container sustain the desire that we've called in? And I know one thing, whenever I've had a big desire and held that vision, I will get a short, sharp shock and almost like an initiation into seeing all the places where I'm not yet able to hold what my desire is truly. I remember when I first started with The Witch, I was like, yeah, I want like a however many £100,000 business. And like, I just wasn't wired for that. Like, it just was not, it was just not, I wasn't wired for that. And so I like straight away had all the material for liberation to show me where I wasn't wired for it. And so there's a real benefit in being like discerning about what we call in. Like, are there any smaller desires that we can start to cultivate capacity, to work with, to cultivate capacity and confidence in our ability to receive? So we often jump as secret witches, like I did, to the big things. Like, I want a healing business that's earning like hundreds of thousands of pounds. When to cultivate capacity to hold that bigger dream, there's like little small desires that we have to begin to play with, or we can begin to play with, to begin to gain evidence to inform our confidence and expand our capacity. So a good question, again, you might want to pause and be with these, like, is how are we with receiving little pleasures? Like, can we create space in our lives to experience pleasure in our food, like the juicy sweetness of a raspberry? Can we create space in our lives to prioritize a walk in the wild, following our belly button? Can we create space to dance and feel the sensations of pleasure in our bodies? Or are we constantly rushing, forcing, doing, wired to receive that? Are we contorting ourselves to meet the demands of busyness and chaos to fit in and be worthy? Like, is that what our nervous system is wired for? Are we wired to receive the rushing, forcing, and doing? And can we begin to expand our capacity to receive more spaciousness, more pleasure? Cultivating capacity to receive means carving out space to be in receivership. And we can do that in small little bite-sized chunks of time, which the witch deeply resists, by the way. It feels like perhaps she feels it's pointless, it's selfish, unless we're creating something big, it's not worth it. Like there's an all or nothingness around the witch as well, me included. So let's look there with love. And sometimes we unconsciously repel what we've manifested because we're still holding unworthiness in this way. AKA, we're not choosing to create the space to connect to our witch and her desires and her pleasureful experiences because we don't feel worthy of our space. That's often one of the first signs that we are disconnected from desire, pleasure, and the capacity to receive our manifestations of magic. And so I'm going to bring this episode to a close with some kind of rituals of receiving, and just exploring our relationship with desire, because we're not going to, as I said, we're not going to heal this in one episode, but there are kind of ways that we can begin to explore receiving, explore anchoring receiving as a kind of devotional witchy practice. Maybe that's 5 minutes of daily ritual that opens your body and your heart and your capacity to receive, whether that's through breath or pleasure or presence or archetypal remedy work. I would recommend that you join our Secret Witches Apothecary if you'd like to step into this, because Phosphorus will guide you through this at your own pace. There are all our archetypal journeys in there to be studied at self-paced. And in September, actually, there will be within the Apothecary an amazing live circle where I'll speak to very practical ways to create space for your witch. And that's almost like the very first step of beginning to like cultivate this kind of receiver state, like starting to create some spaciousness in our life to receive for our witch, to be with magic. And I'll be deep diving into how to begin to connect to your witch in everyday life and how to create space for that. So yeah, that's in September if you want to start somewhere with an easy bite size. But it helps us to learn how to be a witch who receives as a state of being, not a thing to do. But I would also like to offer you something in this episode. So I'm going to leave you with a little ritual to begin this attunement to desire. I recommend basically you take 15 minutes to just be in inquiry. So maybe light a candle, make it your own little ritualistic space. Maybe make it cozy. Again, make it pleasureful. Like bring in what feels good. Maybe you put on essential oils. Maybe you have the candle. Maybe you have your create yourself a little cozy corner. Maybe you grab some blankets and just put some music on. Like whatever's like sensory delight, create that. Grab your journal. And then contemplate the following questions. So again, you might want to pause these for each question. You might want to journal, write them down. But the first question is, how do I feel about desire? We're going to start to examine your relationship with desire. Do I allow it? Do I push it away? Second question, if I do push it away, why do I push it away? Am I feeling too busy? Are other things taking my capacity? Am I feeling unworthy? What's a deeper reason? The third question is, what do I already receive? Because we're already always receiving something. We're already always choosing something. What am I choosing to receive? Chaos, drama, shit. Like, what am I already receiving? Or maybe it is that you're already receiving beauty, love, and magic. Maybe it's a mix of both. What do you want to receive? Do I want to heal this desire wound so that I can manifest magic as my witch? So I can actually live the life that I came here to live? If yes, what is the next step? Now that could be anything you like. It might be joining the Apothecary. It might be journeying with this yourself. And liberating it without the support, even just by creating like a 5-minute ritual each morning to move your body, or it can be any time of day, but to tune into your body, to move your body, maybe dance, attune to the pleasure. Or it could even be something like just as simple as starting to notice the sensations of pleasure. So maybe eating, like with your food, noticing where there's pleasure, or creating space to go on a wild wander, some of the things that I was suggesting earlier. What I will say is that as you're journeying with this, whether you're journeying by yourself, whether you're journeying in the Apothecary, it might be likely that you will notice these habits start and then start to slip and be disregarded again after a few times. as your old patterning creates for you. This is normal. And the deeper invitation is not to even just do the thing, but to notice where there's resistance to doing the thing, where there's resistance to keep doing the thing. That is where the golden self-illumination is. And also remember that this isn't a doing to get you to create more. It's a doing to help you embody your capacity for desire, your capacity to receive. So I'm going to leave it there. This is how we begin to open to receiving our manifestations, which is by choosing to feel worthy, by honouring our desires, by tending to our inner little girl and our inner fire, and go gently, because this isn't easy work. Like, this is deep work, but it's also vital work, because my sense is if you're listening to this, you're here to be a witch. I do have one question from the group. So I'm just going to speak to that. I have just got to a place where I can allow myself to want what I really want. My question is, now that I can, how do I allow that to come into form? So, juicy question. Love it. I feel like this is what the whole episode has been about in many ways. So I'm going to recommend that you now work with the above inquiry, the above practice around receiving in particular. So notice as you do, like, what challenges come up. This isn't about getting things perfect. I think this is something that's really vital for secret witches to understand, because often we come in expecting like a XYZ steps, and then we feel like we failed when we get them wrong, in inverted commas. Like, there's no getting it wrong here. What we're trying to do is, as I invite you into these inquiries and invitations, so whether that's embodiment practices, rituals, inquiries, journaling, like whatever I'm inviting you into, there's no right or wrong. Like, what we're interested in is what shows up for you as you enter into the inquiry. So as you're entering that practice of bringing pleasure into your life, and starting to allow yourself to receive that pleasure, like, let's see what shows up with that. Like, what comes up. Maybe there's old stories around receiving that show up. Maybe there's patterns that are kind of come in and go, no, you can't receive that. That's where the juice is. And I know that you are particularly, the woman who's asked this question is in the apothecary, so I sense that phosphorus will also help you. So let me know in there how that lands. And hopefully that's been helpful for other women as well. So thank you for your question. So I'm going to leave you with all of that juiciness, and I will see you next time. Good to know. Ooh, I do love a good juicy episode. Here are my takeaways. Desire isn't selfish, it is sacred. It's how our inner witch whispers this way to our soul. Naming what we truly want is a powerful spell to create it. Shaming our desires drains our life force. Suppression doesn't keep us safe, it keeps us sick. Manifesting our desires is actually a return to health and vitality. We're already manifesting, always. The question is, are we creating from our soul or from our unconscious wounding? If you've experienced trauma, receiving might feel unsafe, but it's not our fault. Our body has learned to protect ourselves this way, and now our healing begins by gently opening again. The feminine body is built to receive. But how safe do you feel in unapologetic pleasure, in asking for what you need, and in being seen in your desires? Desire is our birthright, not something that we earn when we're finally worthy enough. The witch within you already knows that she is worthy of a life that lights her up. Lots of love.